Hey, ladies and gentlemen, today we are going into ecology. So, what is ecology? Ecology is the study of how things live together, how they get along together, how they interact with each other. So, we're not really talking as much about biology as we are talking about behavior. How are they going to behave around other animals or around other things in their environment? Because that is going to affect how they live, which is the study of life, which is biology. So they're interconnected. So let's jump into these notes. So your official definition is ecology is the study of the relationship between organisms and their interactions with the environment. So relationship between organisms, how animals get along, and their interactions with the environment, how they get along with the things around them. And we're going to organize this. That's right, guys. Organization is key because if you look out in nature, it is a hot mess, and it's actually not. It only looks like a hot mess. It's actually very well structured and organized. So we are going to go through this list of organisms, which is what we really have been studying this whole year, populations, community, ecosystems, biome, and biosphere. And we're not going to go into all the different kinds of ecosystems and biomes and things like that. We're going to talk about how they work. So, organisms. What is an organism? It is, hopefully you know at this point, any form of life. All we did back in chapter 1, we talked about this. An organism is any living thing. So, animals, plants, fungi, those are organisms. They're alive. Even single-celled organisms, the cells that we've been looking at all year, are themselves organisms. So anything that is alive is what we're talking about here. So the example I'm going to use right now is my grumpy giraffe right here. Look at him. Say hi to grumpy giraffe, everyone. This guy is a single living thing, so he is an organism. So let's go to the next level up, populations, a group of individuals of the same species. So now I have a group of this species of grumpy giraffe. And it's not just being the same species, but also being together. They have to live in the same place. So a giraffe in Africa belongs to a population of other giraffes that also live in Africa. The giraffe in the Philadelphia Zoo does not belong to that population, even if they are the same species, right? Because they live someplace else. And then the next level above that is community. That is different populations living in that same place. That's another key thing there, guys. Same place still. So not only do we have a population of giraffes, we also have a population of zebra, and we have a population of lions, and a population of monkeys. You can't see the others, they're all up in the tree. But not just that, we have other living things as well. The grass, plants are alive, so that's a living thing. We have a population of that species of grass and a population of this species of tree. You can't see the other trees, they're off screen. And this is where ecology comes into play. What one population does can affect another population. If this lion eats this zebra, then the zebra's population went down. Make it a little bit more complicated. With that zebra gone, now there's less zebra eating the grass, so that grass can grow more, and the grass's population will go up, and there's more food for the giraffes. That means less eating the tree and more hiding from lions for the monkey. They're all interconnected. And then the next level, ecosystems. I'm sure you've heard this term before. A system, see, it's in the word system, of ecology, ecosystem. A system composed of two parts of the environment, the biotic and abiotic. The biotic are all the living things that we just talked about. So the community, the giraffes, the zebras, the lions, the grass, the trees, you get it. And then the abiotic things that we didn't talk about, the non-living things that are still important, like water. You can't have life without water. We all need to drink things. The dirt that the grass is growing in and the tree is growing in. The rock, yes, that rock is important because maybe the lion was using it to hide so that it can, sneak up on the giraffe. That's a zebra. That's a giraffe. I know animals. So here's an example of an ecosystem. I'm not going to go into all of them because of time, but here's an example. A prairie is an example of an ecosystem. In a prairie, the grass and animals are going to be the biotic thing, and prairies usually have the same kind of grass and the same kind of animals. And then the sunlight and the weather and the soil are all the abiotic things that the grass and the animals need to survive. So here is just a picture of different prairie animals all living together and interacting. Some of the animals eat the plants, some of the animals eat the other animals, some of the animals use the plants to hide. So they're all interacting. Another example is the coral reef. The coral reef is an ecosystem where other animals will live. So biotic factors would be the fish, the sea turtles, and the coral itself is actually alive. A lot of people think they're like rocks or something, but no, they're not. They're actually living things. And then other things are important for all of them to live. They all live underwater, so the water is important. They need to swim. Temperature. You have any idea how easy it is to kill a fish by messing with the temperature? They need a certain temperature to survive. And the weather. If the weather gets way too choppy or, gets way too hot and the water starts evaporating and whatever, it's going to mess with the coral. And the coral goes down, a lot of the other animals go down too. All of it is important, but we're not done yet. What do we got? We have organism, population, community, ecosystem, and then biome. Multiple similar ecosystems. That means they're the same kind of ecosystem, they're just not together. They're not the same ecosystem. Take a look right here. This is what's known as a temperate forest, or at least it was before we built the cities, right? So this is the temperate forest. And over here is also a temperate forest. And over here is also a temperate, and over here as well, right? So these are all the same kind of ecosystems, but they're not the same ecosystem. The animals that live here would never interact with these animals because there's a whole desert in the way. These animals are never going to interact with these animals because there's a whole ocean in the way. So they're not the same ecosystem, but they're the same kind. So they all make up one biome. Same thing up here, the Arctic tundra. The polar bears over here are never going to interact with the polar bears over here. They're not in the same ecosystem, but they do exist in the same biome, same kind of ecosystem. Makes sense? Cool. Moving on. Even more zoomed out is the biosphere. All life on Earth, all the biomes, all the ecosystems, all the communities and whatnot, everything together on this planet. And as far as we know, we only know about one biosphere, ours. But if we ever discover a populated alien planet, that would be a second biosphere. Moving on. Now that we understand the different levels, let's talk about the different kinds of interactions and the places things live. So we're going to talk about the difference between a habitat and a niche. And yes, niche is the pronunciation of this word, not niche. I hear niche all the time. It's niche. Take a listen here.
Niche, also American niche.
Wait, what?
Niche, also American niche.
No, that's not right. Webster, help me out here. There are two common pronunciations, niche and niche. Niche is the more common and older one. What the? Okay, so apparently niche is perfectly acceptable here in America. But I'm still going to go with niche. This sounds better. So what are the differences? A habitat is a species location where it lives and the amount of resources it has available. That's the habitat. So like a squirrel's habitat would be the tree and what kind of tree it lives in and what kind of food it's going to eat in that tree. So what resources it has available and in what location. That's the habitat. The niche or niche, whatever, the species' role in that habitat. What does it do in that habitat? How does it get the food? Does it fight other animals? Does it just pick it off the tree? So it is the interaction of a species with the habitat. How the species is affected by things around it and how the species affects other things around it, meaning how does the habitat affect the species? How does the species affect the habitat? What does it do to obtain and share resources? How does it get its food? Right. So the example here is a field mouse. They're literally everywhere. So habitat, any forest will do. The niche or niche controls what does it do in that habitat? It controls the population of anything it eats, meaning it keeps whatever it eats from overpopulating. So it'll eat insects so that the insects don't overpopulate. It'll eat plants and other smaller animals. So mammals, so they won't overpopulate. You won't have too many of them. And it also acts as a food source for larger animals so that larger animals can continue to live. All part of the great circle of life.
Everything you see exists together in a delicate balance. As king, you need to understand that balance and respect all the creatures, from the crawling ant to the leaping antelope.
Dad, don't we eat the antelope?
Yes, Simba, but let me explain. When we die, our bodies become the grass, and the antelope eat the grass. And so, we are all connected in the great circle of life.
In that circle of life, we actually measure or keep track of where you are in that circle. And we refer to that part as trophic levels, areas of the food chain, just like Mufasa talked about. When they die, their bodies become the grass. We call that decomposing. Right? Your remains become fertilizer for the grass to grow, and then animals eat the grass, other animals eat those animals. Eventually, maybe a lion would eat that animal and die and become the grass again. So we actually do exist in a big circle. That circle is the food chain. The path of flowing food energy from one animal to another. And that's important, guys. Food energy. We're not following really the flow of food, but the energy in that food. Remember, guys, we learned about photosynthesis way back in chapter, I don't know, 3, was it? In the beginning of the year? Very long time ago. But we learned that the sun sends energy to our planet, and plants take that energy and store it in sugar. So when someone eats that plant, they get the sugar, they get the energy. And then if something eats that animal, then that animal gets the energy. If something eats animal, that animal gets the energy. Just keep going on and on. So really, we all get our energy from the sun. We're in a roundabout way all solar powered. So here's the sun, the ultimate source of energy. And these trophic levels that we're calling it, these steps along the food chain. Level 1 would be the plants or anything that does photosynthesis. They take energy from the sun, store that energy, and put it into sugar. So they are known as producers. Trophic level 1 are producers, producing food energy. And then something will eat that plant, eat that producer, they're getting the energy. So they are now known as the primary consumer. Animal eat the plant, take the energy. That's what it means to consume, to eat. And then if something eats that animal, trophic level 3, they're known as secondary consumers. Wait, that's confusing. Hold on. Backtrack here. Did I just say that level 3 is secondary? Yes. Let me explain. It makes sense. So check this out. Our first level, level 1, was not a consumer. It's a producer. They don't eat things. They're just absorbing solar energy, putting food. No one eats until level 2, primary consumer. So our level 2 is the first one, primary, eating consumer. So level 2 is the first eater, primary consumer. And then it means level 3 is the second one, eating. And then, of course, if something eats level 3, they would be level 4. Tertiary, they're the third ones doing the eating. Tertiary consumer, that's what it means, third eater. And then they get the energy. And it just so on like that. Level 5 would be quaternary, level 6, so on, so forth. Quaternary means 4, by the way. Level 6, so on, so forth, continues until the top consumer. Just so you know, usually quaternary is the top. We usually can't get past level 5, and I'll explain why in a minute. But generally, that's your top consumer. And the next level after that technically isn't a consumer. It's what's known as a decomposer. Bacteria and fungus that decompose plants and animals for their energy. Right? So what's the difference between a decomposer and a consumer? Well, consumer is you. You are consumer. You eat something and you get all that good nutrients, everything that we would consider to be good, and use it to build your body up, and you use the energy to survive. And anything that you don't like, you go to the bathroom and get rid of. Decomposers are the opposite. They disagree with us. Where we eat what we consider good nutrients, decomposers eat what we would consider to be bad nutrients. And they like the gross, bad stuff. So what do they leave behind when they go to the bathroom? Compost, the good stuff. Now, we can't eat that directly, but it is the good stuff. So plants will use that to grow in. That's their nutrients. So nutrition goes back full circle, the great circle of life. From the plant to the primary to secondary to tertiary to quaternary consumer to decomposers who give nutrients back to plants. Keep in mind, no energy, right? The energy stopped here with that lion. After that lion, that energy went to the decomposers, and that was it. They used it to live, and that was it. So once that energy is used up, it's used up, and the sun needs to supply more to the plants. But the nutrition, the molecules that we use to build our bodies do make it back to the plants. That's the circle. Nutrients form the circle, not the energy. The energy, on the other hand, we're going to run out of it. Yeah, energy is limited, guys. We can't really recycle this. And this is what we know as the 10% rule. Only 10% of the energy is actually going to be transferred to the next trophic level. That means all of this solar energy going down to this plant, that's tons and tons of energy. Only a little bit will actually go to the rabbit. Why? Because the plant used it. What do you think? It's just a battery storing stuff? No, it's a living thing. It's an organism. It's using energy to grow and do things. Yes, plants do things. So by the time the rabbit eats that plant, there's not a lot of energy left. 10% is the standard amount of energy there. So that's what we call it, the 10% rule. So in order for this rabbit to survive, one plant's not going to be enough, right? You can't survive on 10% of the energy. You need to keep eating. You need to find other plants, which is why we have to eat multiple meals a day. We can't eat just one plant and be like, yes, I'm satisfied for the whole day. No, we got to find more plants and other animals because we're omnivores. We got to eat other things. So if you look at this chart, this represents how much energy is in this ecosystem. And here I go all the way up to 100. That's 100%. All of the energy from the sun that provides this ecosystem. By the time the herbivores eat the plants, only 10% made it over. That's not a lot of energy, guys, which is why when you have a giant forest, you don't have that many animals running around. You don't have an animal for every tree. And then, of course, these are just the herbivores. When the carnivores eat the herbivores, only 10% of this energy makes it to the carnivores, which is why if you go out into the woods, you see a lot more herbivores than you do carnivores. You know, you're more likely to come across a squirrel or a chipmunk or a deer, but you're not as likely to come across a wolf. You might be careful, but you're not that likely because there's not that many of them. Because there's not enough energy here to support that many wolves. Which brings me back to the food chain we talked about and why we can only go so high. Eventually, the energy just runs out. So if this owl eats, I don't know, 5 snakes a day, and this snake eats 5 frogs a day, I don't know. I'm making these numbers up. I don't know how much they eat. And then this frog eats 5 caterpillars a day, and the caterpillar eats, I don't know, 5 plants. We'll stick with 5. That's a lot for a caterpillar. We'll stick with it. That means that is one owl eating 5 snakes. That's 5 snakes eating 5 frogs each. That's 5 times 5. That's 25 frogs. And that's 25 frogs eating 5 caterpillars each. That's 125 caterpillars just to keep one owl alive for a day. That's a lot. And that was just one food chain. We're talking about an entire ecosystem. Guys, there's a lot more food chains in an ecosystem than one. And this is what we're going to call a food web. A food web, or a web of food chains interacting and intersecting with each other. So here we got one food chain, right? From the plant to the goat to the lion. The plant has energy, gives it to the goat, then the goat gets eaten by the lion, so the lion has the energy. And it's going to show how the community interacts with each other. For instance, adding another animal. Now, sometimes the energy goes right from a goat to the lion. Sometimes the energy goes from a goat to a jackal to the lion. Sometimes that energy goes to a rabbit instead of the goat. Sometimes instead of going from the rabbit to the jackal, goes to a big cat, wild cat. Or a mouse eats the plant and a mouse gets eaten by the rabbit or the lion. So you see, they're all interacting with each other. And now check out, I added that owl again, and that owl would eat the mouse, which means the owl is getting energy from the plant that the lion's not getting. Or a snake to this big eagle thing we call kite. That means now these different food chains are all intersecting with each other. Sometimes this mouse is in this food chain, sometimes this mouse is in this food chain. You know, they're all interconnected. And what happens to one animal will affect other animals. This is extremely important. For instance, if we get rid of this lion, then there's nothing eating the goats, which means we're going to have a lot of goats. And then they're going to eat all of the plants. And that means there's not enough plants for the rabbits or the mice, which means they're all going to get hungry, which means these guys are losing food because their animals that they eat died. And so it just trickles down the line. If you increase the predators, let's add more lions, then we're going to get a lot less jackals and a lot less wildcats because they're all getting hunted. And then let's go all the way to the beginning. You decrease the plant life, deforestation, guys, cutting down the forest for paper. That means there's a lot less food for everyone. You know, these guys depend on the plant life to eat, and these guys depend on these guys. So these guys die, then these guys die. So everything comes back to the plants. And that is the basics of ecology. Come back next time, and we're going to talk about the different ways plants and animals and other things all interact with each other. Even the non-living, the abiotic things like water and air have their interactions. And we're going to take a look at that next time. So until then, I will see you in class.